Hello and welcome back to the Skill Point podcast, the podcast on a mission to level up the recruitment marketing industry. Today, I am joined by Matt Comer, director, CEO, founder, SourceFlow, head honcho.
Teammaker, yeah.
Are we all? I'm the office hoover at the moment.
Nice. Yeah. Promotion. No, good
yeah,
to see
exactly.
you.
Yeah. No. But Matt, how you doing? How's things? You all right?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thanks, Haydn. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I've watched a bunch of these back, and I know we've been talking about kind of getting something set up for a little while. So yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be on. Yeah, looking forward to getting into this.
Yeah, fantastic. So in this episode, we're going to be touching firstly on mental health a little bit because we had a really good previous conversation about it. I thought, you know what, let's have a little chat about this because I think it's important. And coincidentally, I didn't even realise, but it's May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so it all just fits nicely. And then we're going to go into getting ROI out of marketing and your website, and then topic 3 is that if you're looking for a website rebrand, I think it's happening quite a lot at the moment, straight after the calendar year, the financial year. We're going to talk about, because we both do websites, what a great website process looks like and things you need to get ready as a marketer or director to make this process as smooth and make that website really hit home and do the maximum amount of work for you. So does that sound good for you, Matt? All sound happy?
Let's jump in.
Perfect. Cool. So mental health, let's start it off. What is your personal experience with this in terms of, you went through a lot from the discussion that we had before, and what's been important for you in not overcoming it, but sort of dealing with it and going forward with it?
So I've kind of had like a bit of I think my mental health journey has been more of a learning journey as much as anything, and there's been real ups and downs in that as with anyone's mental health. And I suppose probably for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been a lot more outspoken on it. It wasn't that I didn't really speak about it, or maybe I didn't speak about it, and that was the problem beforehand. But looking back, and I'm kind of mid-30s, and if I look back now, I probably started struggling with my mental health around about 19, 20, probably around about that time. I can pinpoint, like, now with what I know, that I probably started to struggle then. But I don't think, firstly, none of my friend group ever talked about it. And we're not like the manliest manly of friend groups that exists. It wasn't something that people spoke about, Haydn. And unfortunately, it took a friend of mine took his own life. A really good friend of mine took his own life. He's 27. Which is a very kind of popular age, it would appear, for men in particular, but also women to take their own life. And at his funeral, which was probably one of the worst days of my life, I'll be honest, his mum, who actually is an undertaker and ran the service, she, at the end of the kind of night, she said to me, I want you to make a promise, which is that from this day forward, you talk to people, and you and your friend group now make it a thing that you talk about, and you don't hide this and bottle it, and it becomes a thing. And I did, and it started weirdly with speaking to my wife about it, who had really no idea, and then it started, and then I kind of took it further by speaking to my parents about it, and they it was very upsetting for them actually to hear, because you look after your children, right? You kind of always want the best, and you always think you've done the best by them. And I think they probably at first were like, oh, is it something we've done? Was it how you were brought up, maybe, or something like that? I come from an engineering family, and it's all very kind of pragmatic. And but actually, that was an incredible experience, to be honest. Very sad at first, but actually became an incredible experience, because I think it probably has opened up that conversation, and that now that becomes a thing. And it's funny, they actually probably talk about their mental health now more than they've ever done in my entire life. And then obviously speaking with our friends group, as we promised that we would, it's been a great thing. It hasn't changed the fact that I have I think you would class it as high functioning anxiety and depression is what I have. I don't medicate for it, but I do have a lot of coping mechanisms now, and over the years I've kind of built a lot into that. Reading things, I'm a reader, so I'll read about like CBT and different kind of mental methods there, and I know when it's happening a lot more. I can see the signs of myself. It's usually like fitness and health and weight and things like that, how it manifests. I usually work manically through it, so people don't probably see the issue. but that's kind of how it's worked with me, for a long time. I think over the years it's gotten better because I do talk about it, and I'm more open, and I'm more happy to talk about it. And when we started SourceFlow, it was one of the kind of things that I wanted it to not be a stigma and not be a thing in this business that people have to worry about, right? And if you're having a bad day, that's absolutely normal. You're in that. So that's kind of where my journey sits today. I don't think it's, and I kind of accept it. I don't think it's something that I'll ever not have, right? It is a part of me. And at times it's a superpower for me. Like, I believe like all these things that we have as people are superpowers, and you can use them to kind of make yourself better and do amazing things. I do think that it is something that does make me better at times as well. And I kind of look at it that way. But yeah, I think where I am now and kind of where we are across the industry, I'm more than happy to talk about it. It's going to be the first podcast I've spoken about and kind of spoke openly about it. But that's only because not many people have asked me, funny enough, about that kind of question. So yeah, I think it's since I opened up a lot more, a lot of people do speak to me kind of in private about things, not just in our own business, but from other businesses and maybe people I've worked with in the past. There's been a lot more of that. I had friends from school who reached out and said, "Oh, that's exactly how I'm feeling." Like you're not alone, right? It's a common thing. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of background on my journey about it, and kind of how I feel about it today.
Yeah, nice. I've gone through. I'm currently going through something similar. I think I had a major burnout at the beginning of the year, but I think maybe actually I'd been skirting with burnout for like the last 3 years. I think a lot of people think about burnout as this something that just happens, snaps, doesn't it? It's like in a 2-month period or something like that when it gets too much. But I think there could potentially be stages to it. And the thing that, like you've said, is talking about it has worked extremely well for me. Yeah, started off with my wife and parents, and just admitted that you're different. Your brain is just suddenly just completely wires a little bit different, and you're just a different person for a little bit, and it's okay. So I'm working through that at the moment. But I've been trying to. I mean, this is the first time I've publicly spoken about it, and the whole mission of the podcast was to be kind of just value-led stuff. But I think some of this stuff is important because marketing or leading a business can be extremely high pressure. And the burnout and can lead to so much, not only burnout, depression. And I think the depression is what I'm going through. So talking about it, I think is the major first step, isn't it? I think. And when I've talked to people, friends and other people in the industry and tried to make a bit more of a point about it, they've all got insights and extremely similar things that they've been through. And a lot of the time it is unfortunately men as well, isn't it? But they've not had the chance to talk about it either, have they?
No, exactly right. And, I know we spoke when we kind of talking previously about, like indicators and things that it leads on to, in particular. So for me, I had, it's going to sound really odd when I say this, but my anxiety, I live in Liverpool, used to, in a previous life, travel to London a lot. Right. When we had Volcanic, I'd travel to London, like a couple of times a week, go 2-3 times a week. A lot of my anxiety was travel anxiety, and I like traveling. Like, I like driving places and doing things like that, right? So I had this really weird, like, horrible anxiety where if I got on a train, I would have anxiety and imposter syndrome in particular, the entire route down to London. I'm not worthy. I shouldn't be here. I'm not going to win this pitch that I'm going to meet with this customer, or we're going to lose this customer. The business is going to fail. I'd have it for like 2 hours straight, pretty much, on the train on the way down. And it would stop when I was walking up the Euston platform onto like the main road outside of Euston Road, right? Every single time I'd have that, right? Without fail. That was fine. I realized this like about 2 years in, I realized what it was. When I used to travel a lot by flying as well there. And actually I'd get real bad travel anxiety to the point of going through security, through that kind of process, until I'd have a first beer in the airport lounge, because I'd usually have a beer, right? Didn't really matter what time of day. If I had a beer, it would kind of stop it. And then my brain's like, well, it must be having a beer that is stopping you having the anxiety, right? Because when you drink, you don't have the anxiety. So your brain starts to think, well, that's probably what would solve it. And that led to, that was part and parcel of a really bad relationship that I then developed with alcohol over the time. It wasn't just that, just I think the industry that we work in, and maybe more the tech side than the actual recruitment side of it, has what I believe is quite a bad relationship with alcohol and kind of like a bad behavior with alcohol. I think it's kind of like one of these expected things, and you do well, so here's a bottle of champagne or here's a bottle of wine. Well, I personally think that should stop, because you don't know what the other person that you're giving that bottle of champagne is actually going through. I've been sober 3.5 years now, and I use the word sober quite deliberately. 3.5 years now, I had a bad problem, right? With drinking, and if I do something, Haydn, I want to be the best at it, and if I'm going to drink, I'm going to be the best at drinking. That's kind of like how my mind works. And even after I stopped drinking, I would win awards. Or, here's, you've overachieved. Here's a bottle of wine, a bottle of champagne. And I was like going through something, I was, trying to like literally stop becoming an alcoholic effectively, and you still get it. So, and I think that the alcohol side of things and the mental health, like the depression, they are hand in hand with one another. And so if you are listening to this and you think, maybe I do, like I've got issues with my mental health and I do drink too much, I think it's the same thing. I think it's just how it manifests and how your brains maybe build some coping mechanisms. I listened to Tyson Fury talk about this, and he was like, after 7 pints, you don't think about your mental health. So then you don't have a mental health problem. But then 7 pints becomes 10 pints because you get that kind of tolerance to it. And I think a lot of people just put their alcoholism over their mental health as a mask for it. And unfortunately, it has a snap. The elasticity breaks at some point on that, and that's your brain. It's not like that for everybody, and I appreciate that people have mental health problems who don't drink. But for me personally, it has been one of the biggest alleviators of pain mentally, is kind of stopping that. And just generally, I think I've been the best version of myself, for the last 3.5 years, right? I just think I've not unlocked something, right? But I do think that, I haven't had a hangover. I've been present for my family, for work events and things like that. And I feel like I've actually kind of regained a lot of that control for my life back. So again, it's probably the first time I spoke about this, but I do think there's going to be people that will listen to this who might maybe kind of think, hey, that sounds a little bit like me. And it's incredible. We were talking about it. Like I've got a good network of people now where they've reached out from other recruitment tech vendors and said, oh, hey, I've been 6 years sober. And I'm like, I had no idea you didn't drink. And this is people I used to say, hey, you're going for a beer all the time too. And then you think, oh, am I the idiot? But actually, there's a lot of people in this industry here who don't drink, right? And in recruitment, not just in the younger generation coming through, which I know is far less alcohol kind of like usage, if you like, in the younger generation. But yeah, people in this industry who've packed in a long time ago. There is a good network, and if you feel like maybe you want to give it a try, then reach out to me. And there's a lot of other people who are doing good work talking about it a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it ends up, like you said, becoming a crutch, doesn't it, to just the underlying issues that you have. And I think coming out of lockdown, I think a lot of people experienced it, didn't they? It's a bottle of wine every night just because there was nothing else to do. But then as soon as we come out, especially in the recruitment industry, boom, straight into networking events and just these physical places you go and, 1, 2, 3, 4, going on pints or, glasses of wine, gin, whatever. But it doesn't matter. You don't need to, do you? It doesn't need to give you any superpowers or anything. You can just sort of get through it and deal a lot better, especially if it's causing some major issues in your life. Like you said, it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, a lot of people say, I don't drink that much, but then when I see them and they binge drink, and I think, well, that's kind of a good sign that maybe things aren't all right. Actually, it's a really good indicator. And I'm not one of these people that's like everyone should stop drinking. I am not that. And I know people have really good relationships with alcohol and they can control it very well. I think a lot of people don't, but just don't know it. And I think that's the problem. And I think just as businesses, every event, it's who's sponsoring the networking drinks, or, we're providing drinks after it. It's always a 4:00 event or an all day followed by, drinks reception. And it's then just like how much, booze people can get down the necks in a given time period. And I just don't think that that's necessarily a great behavior to maybe be thinking about going forward. And I think we should offer up a lot of different options around that. I'm all for more breakfast events. If anyone wants to run more breakfast networking events, get the granola out, right? Let's go
Couple
for that.
croissants, little pan of chocolate. Yeah, I love it.
Don't talk to me like that, Haydn. I'm all for that a lot more. And then open the rest of the day up and let people go back to the families at the end of the day, right? Take that pressure away. I think I'd like to see a lot more of that.
I agree with you on that completely, because a lot of the time people want that work-life balance, especially even more nowadays, that a morning event or a lunch event or something would just land so much nicer than you have to give up time with the kids and the family and get pissed, and then you're struggling to get home, and then you got hangover the next day, and it far outweighs it, doesn't it? I think. You mentioned earlier that you've kind of started building a bit of a culture within SourceFlow around talking about mental health. Do you think that was purposeful, or do you think that was something that just came along naturally? And how do you think it benefits your business?
Yeah, I think it's purposeful and natural, probably at the same time. So I naturally, maybe it's the other way. I naturally don't want to talk about it, or maybe haven't in the past. But it's become more natural to me by talking about it. Once you talk about it, it stops being a thing, right? Like, that's the way I look at it. The purposeful side of things is in interviews, when I'm interviewing for the business, or if anyone's interviewing, it's usually something that I'll discuss. And I'll say, something along the lines of, because I don't know who I'm interviewing. I've never met this person before, potentially. So I might not know anything about them, but I'll usually say, hey, we're a good employer, right? We offer kind of unlimited holiday. And we're also kind of really cognizant of people's mental health. So don't feel like if you're having a really bad day, you have to be at your full best, or you have to come in, right? There's going to be times you're not going to be able to do that, potentially. We're really empathetic to that. And we can maybe signpost off to other things, or kind of help you get help if you really need it at those times. And I think by addressing it right up front, before the person is even become an employee, even if they don't become an employee, right? Like, for whatever reason it doesn't work out, or they choose another job, or just don't think they're exactly the fit that we need right at that moment in time. I don't think that matters. I think it's kind of telling people that, hey, there are businesses out there that really do care about you, and I care about the state that you're in. From my experience, if somebody's mental health is off and they're having a problem with it, their productivity and their overall kind of like output levels are just way lower, as you'd imagine. So there's no point really, like, if they were full of cold or something like that, like, it's all this, if you had a broken leg, it is the same thing, right? It's all about your productivity. You can actually have a broken leg and perform better in work than be going through, far better in work than be going through a mental health crisis where you're having kind of suicidal thoughts, right? Like, you're going to perform better with the broken leg, right? I'm telling you right now, especially like in what we do, right? We sit at computers and, we type a few things and maybe speak to people on the phone. So I'm more open about that with our employees, and it's discussed a lot. Like, the first thing I'll usually say to somebody is like, how are you doing? And before, like, if something goes wrong, it goes wrong every day, right? Like, none of us have a good day. The first thing that I think, and we think as a business, before we start to like dish it out a little bit, is to say, hey, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? How are you feeling right now? And because you don't want to be that guy who like dishes out an absolute beating to somebody who's going through a really bad time mentally. Like, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I don't think any of our team want to do that. We're good people. And so we're just more like, it's more of a spoken thing in the business. It's a much more open thing in the businesses. I think from a business perspective, the first person I ever saw openly speak about it was, he definitely won't be listening to this, but it's a guy called Dave Requena. We used to work with years ago. He's at Ubisoft now. And he did this presentation one day about mental health at Volcanic. It wasn't a mental health at Volcanic. It was his mental health and his story put up on a big screen. I had no idea of what he was going through, right? And he was like so brave, really, to put it up on a big screen in front of 50 people and talk about his journey. And probably from that day on, I was like, do you know what? If I do this again, this is going to be a thing, actually, that we talk about. So yeah, it's probably conscious about things, and then there's a bit more of the natural stuff, since probably 2017. With my good friend Jeff. I think there's a bit more of a conscious thing in there as well on that.
Yeah, love that. Absolutely. That's perfect. I think this is something that we also do here. We've got a couple of Gen Zs, so it's very much on the forefront of sort of talking about it and naturally talking about it. But
they're way more mature, right? Gen Z.
Yeah.
So much more.
They know
mature.
what they want. They know what they want in the workplace, and it's fantastic.
There's things that I think we need to do more with Gen Z. right?
Yeah.
Just from the actual work bit,
Mhm.
but actually from like that social EQ side, that emotional and kind of social EQ side of things.
Yeah.
It's a very tuned up generation workforce that we're bringing through, which is
Mhm.
exciting to see how they can develop those relationships. A lot of people are quite afraid of it. I love it. I think it's absolutely brilliant. To learn from what that generation is going to bring through, I think is brilliant. And, I encourage it as much as possible.
And I think it's been a learning process for me having people in my business to do that, because I don't know if you like, as a millennial with my parents, it was very much like graph. That's what all you need to do, just work as hard as possible, and that's all I do, and that's kind of like my philosophy throughout life. Actually, me having to talk about mental health and me suffering with depression within the company, I think has been super super good, because we can do things like you chat to my business partner Will and go out for like a walk and just get a bit of fresh air and talk through things. You come back revitalized, refreshed. That morning could have been awful. You could have had a go at a client or something like that, or something it's really awful could have happened because you're just in that negative mindset. But just to say that this is how I'm feeling, you go and talk about it with someone, just makes a huge difference. So if you're running a business or you're a manager, it's a really powerful tool in your toolkit. Rich calls it the toolkit, Rich Evans, and he's sent me this really cool thing actually about mental health. But it's like having these little things that you can sort of pull on when people are probably, they're like, if they're not acting like they usually should be, there's probably something wrong, and you can kind of dig under the surface a little bit and figure out what it is and just talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. Like I don't do like a Christmas night out here. So if you're into your big Christmas night out, you need not apply effectively. What we did was instead, firstly, not all of our staff celebrate Christmas, and I'm kind of like really in tune with that, I guess. But we did like a what's the best way of looking at it? Like a walk, like a company walk. It got a lot of love actually. Put a couple of pictures up. We got everybody out for a walk, and then we went to a pub and had something to eat, and everyone was home by 5. But everyone loved it. Everyone was like really fresh, and like it was like we did like maybe a 10K walk, something like that, up in like Cheshire somewhere, and it was great. And that's the culture, right? That is the culture. Everyone got a bit fit. Everyone got to speak to each other without like blaringly loud music. Nobody was sick in a taxi. Everyone had a good time, and then got some good food at the end of it, which I'm all for. And if people wanted to have a drink at the end of it, they could. I didn't. A bunch of other people didn't, because they don't drink for different reasons. And and like I say, we're all home back to our families, in pretty good time. That is our culture. Like that is our culture. Let's get a bit fit, and then let's do some other things, like where we get to maybe speak to each other. I actually learned a bunch of stuff when I was on it from people. I learned a lot about people. So yeah, that I think it's got to go right the way through the business, that you're not like putting people in situations they just don't want to be in because you like to go out and do stuff. Doesn't mean everybody else does, right? So yeah, and I did say if anyone wants to organize a night out, you're more than welcome to do that. It just won't be a company night out. It just won't be a thing that we do on our time. So yeah, that's kind of my view on it.
Yeah, and I'm going through something similar. And I think LinkedIn can sometimes be a problem when you see people bleating on about, oh, we went out here, we did this, we went on this trip to thing. And it seems like that's what culture should be. But actually we had we recently just went to the cinema as a team and watched the Mario movie because we're all like, millennial Gen Z. And it's not something like, oh, we need to go down the pub, or we need to have that Christmas night out or whatever. Just think about things that the culture of the people that you're working with actually would enjoy doing, and they do on a weekend kind of thing. And that builds something a lot better, doesn't it? A lot more in tune, and rather than trying to keep up with all the people on LinkedIn that have it sort of pushing this kind of potentially toxic. It works for some, it doesn't work for others.
Yeah, entirely agree. And I think we don't need to all be Tony Montana on a night out. You know what I mean? Like we don't need to kind of like bring that culture through. I just think that's really weird. And yeah, I do see companies, and when we work for one that it's like we're getting 800 people to this place and everyone's going to be on it for like a couple of days. It's like fine, but that is then your business. That is the culture of your business, getting on it. And like how many people have you alienated through that? And what does that look like? I just think that you kind of make it like why aren't you doing it? Like why every achievers thing involves alcohol, right? Not in our place. We have some of our team out in Malaysia, amazing people out there, and they're going surfing. they're doing a little surfing holiday, right? Like 3-4 of them are out there, and they said actually, we do this thing called Velocity every year where we like choose a couple of destinations and then we go off to it. It's got to have a Hard Rock Cafe. Don't ask, it's a long story. But we go somewhere in the world with a Hard Rock Cafe, and their team out there are going, they're doing that, and then they're going surfing. Yeah, because that's what they want to do, right? And it's like, cool, right? They'll go surfing. It'll be good. That is what it is, right? And that's the culture. If you want to do things, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. But I don't think we're like here to put people under pressure. Like, oh, why? I remember when I stopped drinking, like the first work event I went to, Haydn, it was like a thing. People were staying over at this golf club, hated it. And I was still struggling badly. Maybe it was the day I told my wife I had a problem with drinking. And I was like, right, I'm not going to drink, right? Diet Coke. So like, Diet Coke. And somebody was like, do you want a beer? I was like, no, I'm all right, thanks. And honestly, I then overheard the conversation is everything okay with Matt because he's not drinking? Like, what's going on? Like, is he all right? Is he going to leave? I'm like, I just said I didn't want a beer. Like, you know, so, and I think that's a cultural thing of that organization, maybe, that clashed with where I was at that moment in time. So, yeah, I think that's kind of how we don't do it here. And I believe that the best businesses should be there to openly have conversations about things and, like, you know, treat people with whatever respect that they need.
Yeah, fantastic. So key takeaways. So if someone feels like they're potentially suffering with mental health, or they want to sort of find help, what's your sort of main toolbox kit thing to use? And, you know, if someone feels like the culture's going the wrong way in their business, what would you suggest?
So the main thing that I would tell any employee to talk about in a business is go and speak to whoever's at the top of the business. And I know that sounds, you might like jump in line management and stuff like that. Maybe speak to your line manager, but you should speak to people about it. If they fire you, and let's be honest, maybe businesses might, I don't know how everyone runs their operation, then really have you lost anything? You're not owned by that company, right? They don't own you. And if they don't, you know, how much value do you put on your mental health? If you're on 30 grand a year and you get fired, is your mental health worth £30,000? I think it's worth a lot more than that. I think it's worth a lot more. I think there's a price you can put on it. But I think you'll find that a lot of companies, when you go and speak to them, the owner or the CEO or the MD or your line manager, they've got mental health problems, right? And they'll totally respect you for doing it and maybe help out. I think you've got to get it out there. And in terms of culture, if it's maybe going the other way, there are specialists that you can bring in that can speak about this kind of thing, right? If you are struggling, there are some really good people that you can speak to. I know a couple, if anyone wants to reach out to me, I know there's a guy called Dan in particular. If you're going to speak to people, there are people that can come out and help maybe look at your business, maybe talk to your staff about their mental health journey and make it a thing. If you struggle as a business owner to want to talk about this, bring somebody in who's been on the journey, and it's their job to do that now, and get them to talk to your staff about it. Because I'm telling you right now, you will make way more money than you do currently with people who just aren't there mentally in the office. If everybody's in tune with where they want to be in the office and know about it, like the productivity will go up by talking about this. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I maybe the two things I'd do.
Great advice. Thank you. So let's move on to return on investment. Actually, we're doing all this stuff. How do we prove that it's working for us? I think this is such a huge pain point, isn't it, across the board? There's lots of activity happens. We don't really know if we're getting much out of it. So in terms of, and then I know this is something you was keen to speak of, how exactly can we show ROI with our marketing activity and sort of make it work with our website as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So it comes down to setting goals and objectives. Like you want to know what the ROI is that you're retaining on, whether it's views, eyes on, that type of stuff, whether it's revenue at the end of it. I think you've got to always start with kind of the goal that you're looking at. Then you've got to benchmark where you are right now against that. So you kind of know where you want to be, and then you know where you are today. I think once you kind of know those two things and you're really comfortable with whatever the metric is that you're going to try and measure, it's got to be consistent metrics as well. Then I think that's the place where you've got to start. Everything then in between that is the stuff around which tool are we going to use to measure the individual performance, right? So most people would look to something like Google Analytics. Obviously, there's this update into GA4 now. GA4 is a very different experience than Universal Analytics. So, people are going to have to get acquainted with that and will do over time, I guess. But I think you would look at that and say that will tell you some metrics, but it won't tell you all the metrics, right? So if you're interested in knowing exactly where an applicant came through or whether a client came through, it's not really the tool for that. GA, it will tell you the macro level about what's happening. So some of the stuff that there are other tools, but like some of the stuff that we do in our platform, we'll track, the individual at the point of conversion. So that Matt came through the website and converted, but also we'll go and say, well, these are the steps that Matt took on the website. So these are the pages that he visited, how long, back to the point where it'll show this is where he came from. And I see a lot of source tracking, which is just career site or the name of the vendor maybe that they work with. And I think that's fine, right? That kind of gives you a dimension, but actually, the reality is that still a lot of people come from job boards, right? And from aggregators and things like that. And you kind of want to know, did they start on Twitter or Facebook or TikTok, whatever it might be? Did they start there and then they converted? Okay, so now we've got the actual primary source. The website was kind of a secondary source then at that point. And then we can track whatever happens from there. So conversions or straight through to people who didn't get the job, who did get the job, and then the revenue, what we call revenue analytics, pull that back out to say, actually, this channel is working. And I think you should be able to do that for all your channels, right? So show me the return on investment from an event that we ran or this kind of stuff. I was talking about this yesterday with somebody, but it's what tech businesses would probably call RevOps, where, they'd have somebody going through the business that maybe it's their responsibility to hook together marketing, sales teams, operations, IT into one funnel. And, from the points of creation all the way through to the points of revenue, and then beyond, like how are we managing that customer relationship and how we land, expand, how do we make more from it at that point. So I think it comes down to firstly knowing where you want to be, then knowing where you are, then knowing exactly the tools that you need to have in place to be able to pull the right data out, and then having that consistency of data to push through your systems. If you've got that, I think you're in a pretty good position to start to show ROI. And when I talk about your goals and objectives, it's got to be down to like what is the specific actionable, measurable, whatever people call it, like goal that you're looking for, right? It might not always be revenue. If I was going to run an event, I don't know if my primary goal would be revenue. Maybe it would, but it'd probably be signups or signups that are within my ICP, my ideal customer profile. That might be a metric that I look at for it. So yeah, I think you've just got to kind of know and validate all this type of stuff throughout, and then be able to like visualize what that looks like when it comes back on things.
Yeah, super comprehensive. The only other thing I would add into there is sometimes we found that there's like a bit of a disconnect between what marketing sets as their objectives and how it actually feeds into the overall business objectives as well. Because sometimes you'll find that the CEO at that point might be saying, oh, we need to find in more internal talent. So the marketing completely shifts its whole direction to, talent attraction and things like that. Or actually the overall business objectives for the next 5-10 years was actually to build the BD client base. And then that's completely missed out. So I think having that previous step as well with the strategy and having that mapped out and then going into that ROI makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
100%. Yeah, it's RevOps, or I'll keep using that term now, but
I like it.
It's buy-in across the business, right? You can't just do it in isolation. The whole point of revenue operations, RevOps, is that you go straight through the business and you get buy-in at all levels based around the end objective of that business, which could be profit, it could be growth by 20%, whatever it might be. And the RevOps team or individuals, it's their job to make sure that there's that kind of consistency all the way through the business at that point. So yeah, I totally agree with that. One of the things I'd say is, and I have a really controversial, it's probably quite controversial this view, right? But let's go for it. Total jobs, right, got absolutely hammered on LinkedIn. If you logged into LinkedIn when they put their prices up, it was like a feeding frenzy with piranhas, like in those old horror films. It kind of looked like that, and like half the body comes out and the rest of the skeleton. It kind of looked a bit like that when it came out. I have a slightly different take on that whole situation. I think a lot of people hated it because they didn't know how much money they were making from total jobs. Because I look at it this way, right? If for every £1 you're spending on total jobs, you get made 10 back. It's pretty good ROI. Like 10 to 1 ROI is not bad, right? So they put the prices up. Okay, and they put them 300-400% was the figure that they put them up, right? So now it's £4 I've got to spend, but I can still make 10 back on that. So actually now my ROI is like 2 point something, or 3 point in some cases. that's not horrendous ROI still. Like, it's not that bad, right? Like, here's it. Every time you give me £1, I give you 3 back. You'd keep giving me £1, right? Like, that is the reality of that situation. And so I think that the outrage was twofold. I think it was like, people don't like price increases. Yeah, fine. There were a lot of people getting squeezed. But I think it was because they maybe didn't know where they were making their money and tracking their ROI from that. Now, if you're not making the positive ROI, they're not paying the 400%, a really easy conversation to make, right? If it was only 1.4 versus every 1 that you were making previously, where you're like, actually, we're in a negative ROI, we don't need to do this. So I think that, you know, marketers and business owners need to be totally in tune with the ROI across the business, across what they're doing, be able to report up and down correctly to stop people jumping on LinkedIn and absolutely hammering something, you know, like I think that's where it needs to be. I know some businesses hate spending on job boards. That's cool with me. Some people love it. That's also cool. There's a lot in between that. But I think if you're measuring all of your ROI, it takes a lot of the emotion out of the decision-making process. Is how I view it.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think it's the flip side as well. You could be spending a ton of money on a particular job boards and think potentially it's working. I feel like it's working. And actually, once you start getting into nitty gritty, you're losing £3 every pound you spend, kind of thing. So
lots of applications does not equal lots of revenue. Yeah. Right? Lots of visitors to your website does not equal lots of money in the bank. Clicks are great, but pounds are better. Somebody once said to me. And you know, these vanity metrics of high application numbers, if they're all equating to revenue, brilliant. Keep doing it. Let's do more of it, right? I love it. But if they're not, let's find out that it's not just get a gut instinct that it's not. That's how I view it.
So a lot of the time we see a disconnect, don't we, that potentially marketing is great at this and they're mapping out, you know, the sources and the journey they've made through the website. Yeah. And then as soon as that application's gone through, kind of disappears into the ether, or the consultant takes credit for that. From your experience, companies that do it well, how do they bridge that gap between associating you know, value or money in the bank to that marketing activity, you know, months back or whatever?
Yeah, so it's about the usually it would come down to something like UTM source tracking would be the way that I would do it. I would ask businesses to think about something for a second, right? Like in recruitment, you have a lot of, and recruitment marketing in particular, you look a lot at the placement was made. So the consultant gets paid the commission on that placement, and then the marketer judges where the applicant came from in this. So it's a very applicant to consultant relationship that occurs here. But there is actually just one other party in this that very rarely gets looked at, and that's the client and where the client came from. Right? It's just kind of often overlooked. But actually, a lot of the work that marketing do is around brand building and looking great. And, you know, we're writing content, we're creating salary guides and all this kind of stuff. Well, the goal of that salary guide, might be to get some candidates in. When I worked in recruitment, that wasn't the case. It was to get more clients on, right? You would say, hey, look at us. We've got all this data. We work with these great people. Here's some information to inform you. Here's a value add to you as a client or prospective client. And I think a lot of the time that gets missed. Actually, what's happened is a bit of content's gone out. We've generated a client. Somebody's then phoned that customer and said, hey, I noticed you downloaded this. Are you looking for any people? Might be simplifying slightly, but you're looking for any people? And they go, yeah, actually, I am. Now, so what I would do in a tech space on this, I would look at that and go, right. So we placed over the next 12 months, 7 people with that client. So that piece of content that you've created is now worth 85,000 quid from that one client to me. I'm not looking at the candidates. That's a different path altogether. But I'd actually be looking at it to say, we need to look at it this way as well. So I think the better businesses look at it across the whole board. And then they'll have this like nice holistic view of everything. They'll say, right, what's my best candidate sources? What are my best client sources? What's my best piece of content for demand and lead generation? Because if I'm not creating content that's going to make money, then why am I writing it? Like, why am I doing anything? Like, why am I doing that? Do something else with your time, do a bit of paid advertising or something. But I think you've got to kind of, the best businesses that I see, they understand this. They have this like consumerism kind of view of the recruitment process. And I think that, you know, a lot of businesses, I would advise to look more at it like that. Like, why are we doing something? Is it going to generate revenue for us from either a client or a candidate, and start to look that way? So that's one of the things that we do We have tools that'll do that, like UTM source every form on your website, not just your application forms. Track everything all the way through. I think we're quite big on that, and I've been big on that for a little while now, making sure that we've got that in place, and that just gives you the intel, gives you the ammo that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And we chatted about this before. There's that self-reported attribution thing as well that you can also add into it. I did a post about this the other day, and it's quite a popular thing. And it's like a single field on every form. It's required and it's free text. And it's, how did you hear about us?
Yeah.
And then you just, things that aren't as quantifiable, like LinkedIn activity or podcasting and things like that, they can make a huge difference to the brand and the company's direction and their exposure in the market. And as soon as you add that, then the client can give you a qualitative piece of advice, say like, yeah, I heard about you, I've been following you on LinkedIn, following your founder on LinkedIn for 6 months. Well, great, our personal branding is working then. That's equated to 60, 80, 100 K's worth of revenue down the line. So that's another part of that sort of that mix. And one thing that we've been doing quite well is if you keep a spreadsheet of this, as a little tip, give a spreadsheet of all the insights, just chuck them into ChatGPT, just drop them in and just say, read all this, just give me like the overview, what some of the main things that are popping out, and it will go through it in seconds and tell you, well, actually podcast has come up 70 times or whatever, or LinkedIn's worked, or this has not worked, etc. It's quite helpful.
100%. And if 20% of the people who fill it, nobody's not filling in your form by putting that in. Yep. Like that's not happening. I know people say that, but people won't fill it in because there's one extra form field. And in this survey done in 2003, somebody said, forget about it, right? Nobody is not filling in your form, right? If 20% of the people fill that field in, you just got 20% more data. 20% more intelligence about how you're actually performing. Well, that's pretty good. Like I would take that every day of the week, right? And it's going to be more than 20%, right? You're going to get 40, 50% of the people actually fill it in. So make it a drop down. You can make it mandatory. I don't think it's going to change too much, right? I don't think it's going to do that. But yeah, as you say, just put it in there, make it non-mandatory to begin with, see what the kind of feedback is like on it. Split test it one day, don't test it the next, but you've got to give these things a go to see if you can get a better view of your actual marketing ROI and source tracking.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, every market's different, obviously, but there's Chris Walker from Refine Labs. Really like him. He's quite on it, and he did a massive survey across like hundreds of companies across Europe and the US. We got loads of people in and did an experiment on the conversion rate on this kind of thing, and it made no tangible difference in terms of people converting, whether it was required and a filled text compared to no thing there or whatever. No difference. So obviously it might be different and it's worth A/B testing, but people are just going to fill it in, and probably there's a bit of a personal, kind of, I've heard about you doing this. I wouldn't mind filling that in if I've been engaging with someone or visited an event or something like that. It's just, it's a very good way of proving that.
Just think about it, like from a user's point of view. If you're about to apply for a job and you're like, I really love this job, it looks great, I'd be great in this. Oh, hang on a minute, they've asked me where I heard about them. Well, I'm definitely not filling this form in. It's just not going to happen, right? It's going to make no difference whatsoever. So drop it in, get some data, use that data to kind of, see how you're performing.
Yeah, perfect. So one thing that you touched on, I really want your rant about is you shouldn't build your marketing around or your business around Google. Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, I really would. So we get it. This is gonna come back. This one, Haydn. I know that. I'm gonna throw this. You're gonna
really ruffle some feathers. This plus the job board combo.
Yeah, no. Tell me about it. We see it a lot of times, and somebody will throw a case study back and say, "But we did this." I get it. It happens, and it can work. But we get a lot of companies that come to us hanging a hat on, like, what do you do around SEO? And they're not all small companies, but I don't know what small company is these days, but we'll get 50, 100, 200 head recruiter that comes to us and say, we're interested in knowing what your services are going to be around SEO. Like, we don't provide any SEO services. We have a bunch of tools that do some really amazing stuff for it, but we don't provide it. But the reality is that for a lot of the big stuff that people want to rank for and do well out of, SEO is not going to work, right? Or the return that you think you might want to get from it is going to be far more negligible than it really will. Like, it really will. And the money that you might spend on it might be way better spent in something else like paid. Like, it just will be better because it's a more direct to consumer kind of mechanism. Because if you're a 200 head recruiter with 2 people in marketing, and they're spending, like, even with an external agency, 3 grand a month, 2-3 grand a month, they're going up against people like Indeed and Glassdoor and CV Library and these massive job boards who are making hundreds of millions a year, maybe billions a year, valued at billions, definitely. And I've got teams of 20 people working in SEO, optimizing it every single day, trying to crank every 0 point something of a percent out of what they do. Is your third-party agency really going to do that? There are niches, and the micro niches, you can definitely go real, what we call long tail. You could definitely do that. And there are some returns to be had there. But the vast amount of the real estate that is currently taken up on Google these days, in the recruitment space in particular, is taken. And it is a very long-term goal if you want to start to rank. It's very expensive, and it's a very don't bother checking the ROI for a little while on it, for a number of years, potentially goal to set on it if you're dedicated to it. So we're quite clear. We say to a bunch of businesses, honestly, like, I've had a good look at this. The reality is that you could put a lot of time and effort into it, and you're probably not going to get any return from it. And that money is best spent on paid, or it's best spent not doing anything with it, maybe getting another consultant to hit the phones or something. I don't know, but it might be best spent doing that type of stuff, or promoting on LinkedIn, like paid promotion through LinkedIn, that type of stuff. It might just be better doing that, or putting an event on where you're going to get some of your customer database and bring it in and like do a community piece. I think the reality is that just for a lot, and I mean a lot of recruiters, most of those big job terms are taken, and they're owned by big behemoth kind of websites with huge domain authority that will not be moved. And the reason I say don't build on it is because even if you start to win in a niche, it just takes that SEO team working at Indeed to just slightly change their course, and then they're going to push you off page 1. And that's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing in your business you can do digitally to really compete with that. So I just think that a lot of people have made a lot of money over the years, and I've kind of ran and worked in marketing agencies in a previous life, a couple of them. And I've seen people put a lot of money into SEO and it not work. And I'm talking 20K a month retainers, and it just not work for like not even the most competitive keywords. So yeah, I think you've got to have a real sense of like reality around SEO and what it's actually going to do for your business. And the reason I say don't build on it is because I'd be saying, actually go and get another 10 sources that all drive traffic. Don't rely on that one. So I know there's going to be a lot of SEO companies, there's going to be a lot of marketing companies who might watch this or might see this clip. You definitely want to clip this one. But yeah, that's my view on it. Like, I just think that there are other things you could be doing with your money that are going to be put to better use.
Oh, I completely agree, and I've had conversations like this before. The only thing I would say is the things to take from SEO, from an SEO optimized site. There are some things, but you just want to be thinking about user experience,
100%,
site speed, things like that. They help SEO, but there is actually, you just want to be like consumer focused on that website, that someone will land on there. It loads quickly, they can get through to where they need to go, and things like that. And then the only thing that you should give attention to is Google for Jobs, because you can't compete there. But it's really simple to do, isn't it? As long as you've got your rich snippets set up, and the schema's right, and you can run it through a tool, you're fine. You're going to be up there with a bunch of others. But yeah, to go for those keywords, spend it on ads, spend it on LinkedIn, launch a podcast or something like that, because you're going to get so much better return on investment.
I'm going to say this, so when somebody clips this and tries to use it against me, I'm going to have this as a clip for it. And that's that. Yeah, we all have that 1 or 2 customers that did well. Yeah, we all have that, like a customer who did well because they did this one thing in this niche and it kind of worked, and then they got traffic from it. Whether they made any money from that traffic, very different question. But everyone can share that the chart that goes like this, right? Or they can find a tool that will make it look good. I live in the real world, and that's where I sit. And the traffic might have gone up for 1 or 2 customers, but it didn't go up for 60 customers or 100, right? A lot of them kind of are like this, like pretty flat line. They get 2 to 5% increase year on year. It's pretty good, for like a consistent brand. So, I'm saying that so I can clip it back and send it to somebody. But yeah, I think that, if you want to live in the real world, then start to branch out your marketing strategy into a lot of different sources.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this leads us nicely on to the final thing. And it's kind of, if someone is attempting a website, or getting started with the process. Like I said, it's the time of year, isn't it, that budgets are unlocked, and it's always the first thing on the agenda, isn't it? Let's refresh our website. It's pretty old. So the one thing that we discussed is you think it's very valuable to have a marketing resource or an agency involved in the process immediately, rather than just web agency working with director. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So in particular, if we work with businesses that are like management owned and they don't have a marketing contact, the first piece of advice we'll give them is that they should engage with the marketing agency. There's loads of reasons behind it, but it's mainly things like the emotional attachment that people have to their own brand and website actually obscures the success of the project. And by bringing a marketing company into project manage from what we call client side, it tends to remove a lot of that type of view of things. So yeah, I would advise as much as possible to do that, to bring that in, just to kind of, again, de-risk a lot of that that side of things. So yeah, 100%. That's my view on it. I would do that if I was a business owner. If you've got a marketing function already in the business, so if you already have a marketing team, I'd still probably go and speak to a marketing agency to get that overlay support on maybe things that you maybe struggle with, or like time sensitivity. Surely you can't do everything, and you can't juggle all of your own time, maybe around the branding and things like that. There just isn't that. It just isn't realistic to ask people about that. So yeah, I would kind of say that at least go and speak to some good marketing companies, maybe yourself and companies like that, where I'd say, what support can you provide me as a marketing team? This is what we're good at. This is what we're not good at, and where we could probably need that overlay. But if you are management owned and you don't have a marketing function, maybe you've got an ops director but no marketer, I'd bring a marketing agency in. I'd bring a kind of more generalist digital marketing agency or a specialist recruitment agency, marketing kind of company in particular. And I'd say, hey, this is where we want to be. What can you provide? Can you manage this process for us? And then ongoing, what kind of work can you do with us? I would always say that's a win.
Yeah, and it's the difference between having a website that not only looks good, but it's more than a brochure site, isn't it? It actually has like tangible utility to the objectives of the business and where you want to get to. And it's more than just a storefront, but it's actually a physical store for you. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you on that.
There might be business owners that really don't care, right? And they just want something like thrown up quickly. And okay, fine. Like in that instance, I don't really care. They won't really care. And so maybe I went. We tend to not really work with those businesses. Like we tend to work from a certain size upwards anyway. But in previous life, I have done. Okay, there's a place for that, but actually, are you really going to be happy? Probably not long term. So just engage with somebody, add a little bit onto the actual cost of your delivery, and it will come back tenfold in the actual end quality of the product that you have. You're not a specialist in building websites and looking at it from your side. So bring somebody like yourself in, or bring an agency in to actually overlay this and get to the right end results. I would do that every single time.
Yeah, and it's just expectation management, isn't it? With a web agency, like you're going to do a lot of work, but you're not going to go out and do full market research and figure out pain points and like hooks and all stuff
behaviors
like that. Yeah, exactly. And figuring out what your marketing strategy is. So I think knowing that, the web agency or the provider like yourself is there to make a really awesome website, there still needs to be that steering the direction and strategy behind it.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah, perfect. So in terms of some things that, so say you've got an agency involved or you've got a marketer, I think we've touched on kind of like strategy a little bit there. From your experience, what has been like great ducks to have in your row before you start or kick off a marketing project to make the agency's role more smoother and just to get the most out of it? Yeah,
so couple of things. Again, back to what we were talking about earlier on ROI, have an end goal and understand where you are today. And if you don't understand where you are today, because you will have an end goal, right? You'll know that yourself. But if you don't know how to benchmark today, it's a good indicator you might need to bring somebody in to help with that. And maybe you need some help in the company. So I think you need to kind of set up for success. Like that would be like a key thing. Other things to get in a row are, what's your decision-making tree? Who makes the decisions? What does that process look like about signing a design off and things like that? Years ago, there used to be this kind of thing where you say it was the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion. You usually kind of took hold. If that's how your business works, that's cool with me. If it's not, and actually you've got a channel of people, let's get that as a clear group that meet to sign off designs, right? But don't have somebody get involved from like random team that had nothing to do with the website and then crap all over the designs that we're about to be signed off in the 11th hour of the process. Get them involved.
Terry from accounting says he doesn't like the colors or the button.
Yeah,
he's like, I don't care what Terry thinks.
Can't quite read the text. Can't quite read the text, and it becomes a thing, right? We've all seen that. So get your decision-making process, and then start to get things like your sitemap, your architecture, your structure, who your audiences are, those types of things. If you don't have them, again, a good indicator you need a marketing company. But yeah, get all of that type of stuff really clearly laid out about how you want it to work. And then when you enter the actual project, it'll be a lot slicker. It'll be a lot slicker from there.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I had Claire Stapley on the podcast before, and I don't know if she said it on the podcast or a training course she said, but she was like, you shouldn't have more than three, like through the process, like 3 or 4, max 4 decision makers. Too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing, and you get a difference of opinion. So actually figure out the person that's properly aligned with the business and knows what they want, and just trust the process and the results you're going to get, because these people that are involved with it are probably the best people to make that decision, and they've done their research and they know what the market looks like. And your opinion on something based on like your favorite football team or something along the lines of that, it just doesn't matter, because you're not the audience at the end of the day for the website.
100%. And what I will say is this as well, and this is kind of aimed at certain business owners, but if you're a recruitment business owner and you have a marketing manager, trust them to make the decision on who they want to go with. Right? Yep. Because I see this, I've seen it very recently a couple of times with us, where the marketing managers were like, I really want to go with SourceFlow, for example. Or maybe it probably happens outside of us to other people that we are in the same category as. The marketing manager says, yeah, I really want to use this vendor because I've gone through everything. I've sat down with them. They've got to understand my vision. And then the owner overrides them, because they can override them. And they say, yeah, but I think we should stay with X. And they're like, you've just then got your marketing manager. Firstly, you've just overridden them. So you have no faith in them really, anyway. And secondly, you've just tied them in for 3 years with a vendor that they didn't even want to stay with. Like, how do you think that's going to set up that relationship? Not very well is the actual answer. And that's why you see a lot of good marketers move companies, because they've got owners of the businesses or maybe senior kind of leaders who just have no actual faith in the marketing team. I think marketing's a bloody difficult job in recruitment. I think it's probably, for me, the hardest job in recruitment. And I've spoken to so many owners about that. I think it's the hardest job in recruitment for this reason, that you need to trust your marketer, right? You need to trust them to make that decision-making process. You need to trust them to choose the right vendor. And then you need to trust them to actually manage that process and get the best possible end result for you. Otherwise, why are you hiring them? Just go external and get an external third party that can burn you through a website project, and then go do something else with your time, right? So, I think that if you've got marketing in, let them be heavily involved in that process, not just through the actual process, but as part of the decision making as well.
Yeah, fantastic. I really like that. Yeah. I think some of the issue is the amount of budget that they give to a marketing person with it, or they hire someone too junior, but obviously they level themselves up, but then they build this preconceived notions that they should be at this level, but potentially they're not, and they're still working their way up, and then that just sours the relationship, doesn't it? So I think putting a bit more budget and realizing that marketing can be one of the most key drivers in this day and age, especially if in recruitment marketing, is super essential.
Yeah, marketing is a profit center. I will repeat that. Marketing is a profit center in a recruitment business. You will bang 25, 30K base salary into a recruiter, bang that into your website. I would look at it that way. It should be returning revenue for you. So give it to your marketers, trust them to return on it. That's how you have to look at it.
Nice. Can you provide any examples and great experience where everything went right and the process was smooth as butter, and that ended up with an amazing website?
So most of this, I'm going to kind of blame Aaron Trump here a little bit. Like we've done this for a long time, Aiden.
No, absolutely.
A long time, and we've made a lot of mistakes. I can probably give you 1,000 examples of where it didn't go right. But I'd say the way that we've kind of got it down at SourceFlow now is about there or thereabouts as good as it'll get, right? Because it's a really experienced team, and we're working with some pretty good clients, right? I think if you look at some of this stuff, that we're doing now around, like we've launched like Panda International and Strive that we just launched, Strive Sales.
Yeah, I've seen both of them, really great websites.
Yeah, and they're really good examples of where we've worked with multiple agencies to bring that together. So there's a guy called Neil Garner who does a lot of brand work that we worked with on both of those websites actually. And Neil's kind of one of these like visionary designer guys. Like he's not, but I feel like you should just like wear tweed and smoke a pipe, right? He's like creative as hell, and he gets it. He's a pleasure to work with because we're not limited by anything on our platform or our design, so therefore he's not limited on his creativity, and we're up for the challenge. And I think they're really good examples of where the customer's been like the vision that they have for where they want to be is exactly where it's ended up. Maybe ahead of where it's ended up actually, because good agencies have got together, they've trusted their agencies, both trusted their internal team to deliver heavily. I've met the owners of both business. Both trusted their marketing managers and marketing directors and ops directors to deliver the process without getting too heavily involved. And the end results are absolutely brilliant. So, from a process point of view, I think we're there. But then sometimes it's about how we're going to bring other third parties in to make the best solution. I don't love the companies who are like, oh, we do everything and we're the best at everything under one roof. I just don't think you can be. I've read like recruiters who specialize in a niche. There's a real reason for that they don't specialize in everything. And it's because you become specialized in a thing. So like, that's why we don't do SEO or PPC or any of that, because we just wouldn't be as good as we are just building one thing, which is kind of websites and marketing tech. So yeah, I think there are a couple of really good examples, as well as all the other customers that we've got, of it just coming together really well and just like being a slick process. Integrations, the tech all comes together with the design, the creativity. It's a really nice thing to see.
Yeah, fantastic. So final question, and then we do a quick fire question round, and then I'll let you go crack on with your day. Thank you so much. A website, you see it a lot of the time. It looks amazing. It looks great. The design's fantastic, but the utility is not there. Yeah. What can we do as marketers to ensure that not only does it look good, but it also plays a vital role in our business's operations?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I would heavily advise on. One is to think about conversion on every page is one of the things that I would do. Like, do I hit a dead end? Is there a form at the bottom of every page, or is there contact that I can get from every page, or can I pick up the phone? Like, I think you should be thinking about how I can convert on every part of this website. Amazon, eBay, Indeed, not the best looking websites in the world, right? They're not winning awards, but incredibly high performing websites, right? And that's because the ability to convert is there at all times. And it is easy to convert, right? And they've made it easier through phones and things like that, and multi-device. Like it's gotten easier over the years to convert. That's why they work. That's why they perform so well. One of the key reasons, anyway. So I think you need to think like, does my website allow people to convert on a blog or on whatever the article is? Like, does the blog get you to the next blog? If that's your conversion funnel? So I think that's one thing. Secondly, I think it's down to some of the tech that you're going to use with it. So job search is usually like the worst part of a recruitment website, and it is the biggest part. That's where the magic happens, right? You transact from there. And so we partnered with the Google Talent Cloud API with Google, quite early days, like very early days, we partnered with them. We used to be on Elasticsearch previously. Elastic just does not manage locations very well. Like from my experience, it's really difficult, and you need like server management for it, and you need a bunch of other stuff, right? It just doesn't work very well. And just look how it works in America and things like that for UK businesses. It's really difficult. Whereas the Google Talent Cloud does a load of cool machine learning shit. Like it lays over the top of it, where it's like, it will translate. If you put like administrator in German onto a website, on a fly, it'll do 100 different languages, and it will find, okay, they don't have a job in German that says administrator, but it will return the English job for it straight away. And it's doing that on the fly. It will do things like it will spell check. If you put biz dev in, it will understand, because it's a machine learning engine that's got millions and millions and millions of data points. It will say actually machine learning. It will say biz dev is business development, which is closely related to sales development. So it will then on the fly order your job search to do that type of stuff. Because so for us, like actually bringing in tooling around that is just advancing that kind of user experience far better than maybe somebody who goes to a website. Typos. Oh man, come on. Like so many job searches don't manage typos. And like I'm a fat finger typer, honestly. I just like button bash at this point in my life. And I type out all the time because I'm like too lazy, and then I see it's got, oh, there's no results because I spelled administrator wrong, and it's like, oh right, well they don't have any administrator jobs. No, you've got like 50. It's just that your actual job search has now impacted your experience. So it's areas like that, like not being able to transact, not being able to find the right information. And then just think about your navigation. Like some of the navigation structures I see on these websites are horrific. There's like 12 things in the bar at the top, and there's no like big mega like just look at how some of the better tech companies do it, like, or big marketing companies do it. Stripping navigation, they're using kind of mega nav overlays to quickly direct people off to the right part of the website that they want to get to. So yeah, just think about like how much info you're serving to people on top of it. So there'd be probably 3 things I'd start with. Have a look at your existing site, see how it functions in those areas, and then if they're going well, great, you're probably in a good space. But if not, maybe it's time to have a look.
Yeah, fantastic. I really like the call to action thing. So, and you always find like on the client and the candidate centric pages that it's just a form, but actually there are some special ways that you can kind of get a bit of a better lead or a better call to action, like join our candidate community. You're going to get regular updates about your job. Just get in the mind of the person that's going to be going on that candidate page, or get updates on the jobs, or the client one, fill in like a health check questionnaire, or download this report, as things like that. It's just giving back some kind of value along with the call to action. And then your second point on the navigation, so the one that I was talking about, I see you guys always smash it, but it's like the internal language just needs to stop on websites. You don't
candidates.
What is a client? Like, if someone's going to go on your website, they're not going to think of themselves as a candidate. They're looking for a job.
They're looking for a role.
Yeah.
Looking for a job. Just write looking for a job, please.
Yeah,
just write looking for work, or job search is better, right? Just put job search or something like that, right? You know, I know people love having candidate areas, but like, why? Like in some instances, ask why I've got an area about candidates. You're a recruitment agency. They're looking for work. They've got pretty good knowledge about what you do. Right, unless you're doing something really super special, or there's like something about a process that you've like stamped about how you work with people. So is it Real Recruiter? He's got like he does video interviewing of all his candidates, and he does like the video profiles, and I think it's phenomenal. Like if you're doing that, talk about it. But if you're not, don't bother. Like you're just taking up real estate on
because you find out those pages are just bare minimum as well. They've got like the latest jobs and maybe a little bit text. Oh, we find the best people, and it doesn't really,
just like, who cares?
Exactly. Really great Thanks for that, Matt. Just to finish off, quick fire question round. Are you ready?
Let's go.
What's your favorite pizza topping?
Pepperoni, but like classic Italian style pepperoni.
Yes, finally, some people keep giving me weird answers like anchovies and artichokes and stuff. I'm just why has no one said pepperoni yet? Just
give me like melted cheese and pepperoni on a big, like New York style pizza, and I'm good. Yeah,
perfect, great. What is your best productivity method? How do you stay productive?
So firstly, I accept that I'm not very productive, like is a good productivity method. Secondly, I have an album that I put on, and it's like a mental anchor point. There's a book, Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, and no one's read it. It's probably a seminal book in my life. And he talks about anchor points on things. And I put an album by a band called Coheed and Cambria on. It's got Apollo and Burning Star 4 is the name of the album. And I put that on, and it takes me back to being like younger at university, focusing. And every time I put the album, I'm like, shit's about to get real. And like I focus during the entire album. And I know I've got like 45 minutes in me of prog rock. I know I've got that in my head. So yeah, that's my best productivity method.
Love that. And your favorite podcast?
Well, it's obviously this one, Haydn.
I love it.
Yeah, because there is outside of this, I like the High Performance podcast. I think High Performance is a good podcast. I don't think I'm particularly high performance. I like to think I am sometimes, but I like just hearing a lot of there's like the Johnny Wilkinson one in particular, Tyson Fury, people like that, who have opened up about their mental health more than anything, and like hearing how they like compartmentalize things. There's a saying that I think Johnny Wilkinson came up with on it, which was that, or maybe it wasn't Johnny, he might have referenced something else, but it was like all states are temporary, nothing is permanent. And I say that to our team when we're going through bad times. All states, good or bad, are temporary. So just embrace it that you just don't know how long it's going to be, but it will change at the other side. If it's good, it will become bad. If it's bad, it will become good. And that's kind of like the yin and yang of my life, how I look at it. So yeah, I like that podcast for that reason.
Yeah, nice. That's kind of that matches quite closely to like Buddhist teachings, doesn't it? Actually, I did chat with someone that went to retreat and they said something like that. And then what company does marketing the best? Doesn't need to be recruitment. It could be anywhere in the entire world, any company.
Company that does marketing the best. I'm a bit of an Apple head. So I do like Apple. I don't think the marketing is particularly good, but just the emotional buy-in that people have with Apple, I think, is insane.
The copy is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I do love HubSpot because I respect what they did. For me, it's Nike. For me, it's Nike. Yeah, I mean, everything about that brand I buy into. Like, I pretty much anywhere Nike trainers. My little boy only wears Nike trainers nowadays. I love everything about what they kind of stand for and like maybe what they do. Like, okay, we all make mistakes, right? Things go wrong in brands, but I just think that the way that they manage situations, particular things like the Colin Kaepernick situation and how they came together around him for that was insane. Big NFL fan, so I was up on that. But yeah, for me, it's probably Nike because they just give me that feeling that I'm part of something when I wear those shoes. And I think that's what marketing is. It's that emotional feeling.
I'm just reading Shoe Dog at the moment, and
ridiculous.
What a book. So just start straight off the bat. It's just a great read, isn't it?
Yeah.
Final question. I didn't actually prep you for this, but it's a nice one to throw out there. What is one piece of advice you'd have for a person in marketing or sort of this space coming in?
Get a mentor. Yeah, I'd say get a mentor. You can't know all this yourself. And I see a lot of recruitment owners that bring in junior marketers and expect them to do 15 different jobs, right? And I think if you're a junior marketer in particular and you're into the space, find a senior marketer. I love Janine Aaron. She's a good friend of mine. She does like amazing work with her brand, The Talent Crowd. They're a customer of ours. But actually she mentors a lot of people as well. And they are so much better for the fact that Janine is involved in their life. Not just probably for work. She probably is like, she'll chat to them about things as well and go through it. But she's firstly a brilliant person, and secondly, I think she provides that level of mentoring that a lot of businesses don't know that they need their staff to have. So I would say, like, even if you're a marketing manager, get a marketing director as your mentor to help you make that step up if you ever want to make that. If you're a marketing director, get a mentor who's sat on the board of a bigger business, not even just in recruitment, who might mentor you to say, like, how I became a CMO at this company. I think we all need somebody to talk to. I do. I speak to a lot of other owners and kind of like spill my guts to them about where I'm doing badly and get them to kind of appraise me. So yeah, I have people in my life that do that. And I'd advise them to get a mentor.
Love that. Yeah, really great advice. And I would definitely say, yeah, completely agree with you on that. That's powerful stuff, isn't it? Thank you, Matt, for your time. I know we probably went over, I always go over. I say 40 to 50 minutes and ends up being over an hour, but it's good conversations. Yeah, exactly. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, if they're still hanging around in the podcast, what would be their best ways?
Yeah, I'm a LinkedIn head. So contact me on LinkedIn. It's the best place to hit me up. I'll talk about things around recruitment marketing, maybe some AI nowadays and some of the bits and pieces, but I'm pretty siloed in what I talk about. But hit me up on there if you've got any questions or you just want to see maybe some of the content that I share and that I'm into. Best way of getting in touch with me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Cheers, Haydn.